Hi everyone, welcome to the final instalment of Vamp's webinar series, COVID-19 Perspectives. Today we're talking leadership, and I'm joined by two people who have been leading startups through the coronavirus crisis. First up, we've got Vamp's CEO, Gill Findlay. Before joining Vamp a year ago, almost to the day, Gill was at Australia's newest unicorn, Safety Culture. At Safety Culture as COO, she scaled the company from 30 people to almost 300 people, to over 300 people. Playing a vital role with Gill in the scale-up was our second guest, Nick Ingall. In addition to Safety Culture, Nick also brings leadership experience from Spotify and Atlassian. Since then, he has co-founded the Lab 17, which partners with startups and helps them to scale by building their teams and culture. Welcome to you both. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, Lauren. Nice
Hi, guys.
to see you, Nick.
You too. Been a while.
It's been a while.
Is that a Zoom background I spy there, Nick, or have you just got a very luxurious New York pad going on?
Fancy.
Yeah, I'm trying to live the New Yorker lifestyle. However, with two toddlers running around, it's definitely not my room that I'm sitting in. Thanks to Zoom for that one.
Oh. Well, if you've got any questions for Gill and Nick throughout this, then please just type them into the box below and we'll see what we've got time for at the end. So let's dive into this. Now, I banned the word unprecedented because it's the most overused word at the moment. So, but you know, we are living through a really unique set of circumstances at the moment, and no leader will have actually been through this before. But is there anything in your backgrounds that you think has helped you to prepare for this moment? And is there any experience that you notice yourself keep drawing upon?
As you said, Lauren, Nick and I have both worked in startups, and I'm definitely drawing on that experience now. The difference between being a wartime or a peacetime CEO is definitely back in the spotlight. The idea that a leader, when things are going really well, you're focused on expansion, you're reinforcing the company's strengths. But in times of war, when the company's threatened, a whole new set of skills and actions are needed. So I think being a CEO or really any leader in a startup is like being a wartime CEO all of the time. So it's crazy, it's tough, it's unpredictable, and even when things are going really, really well, you're constantly just thinking about survival. You know, you're constantly monitoring cash. You want to stay lean. It's never fully peacetime. So I think obviously the sort of crisis that we're in now is way beyond that. But those experiences that you have in startups to stay calm, take in information, make decisions really quickly, while still obsessing about your mission and your customers and your people are critical. So yeah, that would be the experience that's helped me the most.
Yeah, I think the current environment has brought a lot of extra pressure onto all companies, all walks of life, and the technology industry is no different. I think the concept of peacetime and wartime talks to a varied approach of leadership. To Gill's point, the early stage venture, though, it's in constant wartime. I'll take you back to 2011. I joined about 110, 120 person company in Sweden called Spotify. The product itself, it was in the music streaming domain. Now, the vision of Spotify was quite unique. However, the reality was we were going to work every day up against Apple and iTunes and Google Play. So when you talk about competition and you're in startup mode, there's no bigger challenge when you're putting on that Spotify t-shirt every day, going to work, trying to figure stuff out as you grow and scale. And so that kind of analogy, I've been in wartime since that period of time. It's the nature of startups. You've got to figure stuff out on the fly. And if you stick true to your vision and your mission and why you're doing things like Spotify have done, you generally get the outcome. But it's definitely a wartime experience that I've seen over the last decade or so.
Yeah, I think obviously both of your experience leans more into the wartime sort of leader, but have you had any experience of being the peacetime leader as well? And which would you say sort of suits you the best?
Yeah, I'd say since 2011, I've predominantly been in earlier stage companies, a few sub 100 employees. And so I'm more inclined to say the wartime over the peacetime situation or style. However, just to give some, I guess, some context on that, it just means a relentless daily battle to win without knowing how far you are from the finish line, or if there's even a finish line in sight. That ambiguity and that relentless pressure, it kind of becomes addictive in time as well. And so while it is a glutton for punishment, it's also an unrivaled learning opportunity. As a leader, I try and instill that fact where get comfortable and not being comfortable. And if you can do that, you'll probably be okay.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I'm the same. My style is definitely suited to being a wartime leader. I do my best when I'm being honest and authentic and getting back to the basics and really focused on execution. So yeah, it's definitely addictive. Once you've done it a couple of times, you want to do it again, and really reflecting on it. It was the right time for me to move from safety culture, because most of the war was won there. They had, moving towards profitability with lots of capital. They were definitely heading towards that peacetime mode, which is awesome. But I was definitely after another wartime opportunity when I joined Vamp, for sure.
Definitely a glutton for punishment, or the Glaswegian in you looking for a fight, maybe.
Or really getting away with as much swearing as possible, which you have to do in wartime. Sure.
The third leadership style.
Definitely. A Glaswegian who swears. Who else? Why weren't you on that in battle?
100%. So we spoke to Don Price from Atlassian last week, who I know that you both know well, and he made a great point around authentic leadership. He said that currently everyone is saying the same things and talking the talk around values, whether that's for marketing themselves or whatever. But he said that it will soon become clear who is living up to those values. And I was wondering, what's your take on that?
Sounds very Dom. Right now, I think who you are in business as a leader is very exposed. It makes the good things about you great, and it makes the bad things about you terrible. Everything is really magnified at the minute. And so if you're not authentic and you really don't have the right intent, then your people, and that's who matters the most, see through that. So, it's pretty clear.
Yeah. We've even seen that in market, Gill, with the press release of the CEO email from Brian Chesky over at Airbnb.
Amazing.
1,900 or so employees having to exit the business, and the authenticity, the transparency that is displayed through that message. When you're living that value, when you're leading in a manner which represents you and your company, it gives the best chance for those affected to understand the decision, to understand the change. It's not easy. It is always hard. But in that instance, I drew so much inspiration from the approach, knowing that there's so many of us going through this type of situation right now, and they've done it really well, and that shines through even when it's difficult. I think on the flip side, watching the news in Australia with Virgin Australia, the airline, a good friend of mine experiencing a 10-year anniversary there this year, and it was just so unfortunate that the information that was being passed on to the employees of the company, it was generally coming from the media, from the press, before it was coming to them. And there's kind of two different approaches there around the true values of a company, the true values of an approach, how leaders can weave their way through these difficult times. There's another example outside of the corporate world with a guy called Trent Cotchin, who's the captain of the Richmond Football Club in the AFL. So Trent's been the captain now, I think, for about 5 or 6 years. And as a leader, when he first became the captain, he thought he had to be a certain type of leader. He thought he had to look at the industry and operate in a manner that had been carved out in time. And you could see that his performances on the field dropped. His performances with the media dropped. And he worked with a leadership consultant who I was talking with about this, called Shane McCurry. And he said, it's just about being authentic. Trent developed his own style and his own approach. And since he's taken that on and has gained a lot of comfort with his authentic style, he's now been a successful captain, and he's probably playing the best footy of his career. And when you see that time and time again, it's so important, that authenticity piece.
Agreed.
Absolutely. Throughout this experience, what would you say has been like the biggest eye-opener for you, and what has surprised you the most?
I've got a weird one. I'd be interested in your point of view, Nick. Don't get nervous. I don't know if I've asked you this yet, but I've talked to a lot of leaders in a lot of different businesses over the last few months, you know, big companies, startups. It's been great to have a network to, I suppose, count on during this time. And there's been one consistency recently that's kind of, I don't know, surprised us all. It's that despite being on the verge of a serious pandemic where everyone is hyper alert to their health, there's been a complete lack of sick days. You know, productivity in most organizations has been high. I certainly know our product team have been shipping like they've never done before. Like our self-serve platform is streets ahead of where it was when we started. So the irony of it taking a pandemic to have a healthier, happier workforce is fairly interesting. But I don't know what you think about that, Nick.
It is interesting, you know, when you know you've got an engaged team, you've been forced to send people home from work because they are sick, they are genuinely sick, but they have the engagement with what you're doing, and so they want to try and push through that. I think one thing that's going to be equally interesting as we move back to whatever the new norm is going to be is a lot of candidates within the work I did were asking around the work from home benefits. Is it a thing at this company? Do you offer it a day a week or 2 days a week, or how does it work? And it's become more and more prominent in the technology sector over the last 5 or 6 years. I'm going to be super curious to see if the benefit is indeed going to shift to, do you offer a work from premise benefit? Do you offer a work from office benefit in the future? Can I come in every Friday? Can I come in for a week, a month? Do you even have the real estate facility anymore?
Yeah.
It's going to be amazing to see what happens in regards to that. If you look at companies like WeWork, I'm not sure if they're going to flourish with the changes that have come and the learnings that we're going through, or the opposite. It's going to be, I'm not sure what's going to happen, but it's going to be really, really interesting to see how that pans out.
Yeah, I don't think anyone, any company or any government can fail to change as a result of what we've learned over the past 3 months. I definitely know it's changed me for sure.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting what you said there about sort of the benefits of working from home and in an office, because it's definitely made me have newfound gratitude for sort of working in an office and being around your teammates and things like that. So I was wondering what this experience has made you grateful for, and what was the biggest thing that it's taught you?
It's definitely around that flexible and remote working perspective, Lauren. I've learned a lot, and I've learned the value in flexible and remote working. And I know technology companies have been doing it for years and years and very successfully. And now so many people, and regardless of a lot of roles that they have in business, they've all stepped up. I know all my people at Vamp have definitely stepped up, and I'm so proud of them all. I think going into this crisis, I had an initial lack of trust in the process, not the people. I thought having everyone working from home and remote from each other would hinder innovation. Obviously, working relationships are so important to getting a result, and especially in a rapidly growing business, it's all about, you know, being in the trenches together. So I was definitely skeptical. But what I've learned is that the right people, and I've got the right people, seek out others and they make it work wherever they are. And I am loving being wrong, which is awesome. I think it's taken about, you laugh a bit too much at that, both of you. It's taken about 10 years, I think, to grow remote working about fourfold, but I reckon we'll grow fourfold in the next year, maybe less.
Yeah, I remember having a few healthy discussions with you over the journey on that particular topic. So,
Yes.
yeah, we see. I think it's going back to the basics for me, understanding fundamental business processes, fundamental business principles. It really is quite simple. Solve a validated problem, help your customer see value in the solution. And if that's the case, they generally won't have an issue paying for it. I think sometimes we, in a very good market, a very positive market, we have the tendency to overcomplicate things, maybe add a bit of fluff, as I say, to the overall operation. And within the tech world, we see this a lot. Excessive travel, these large conferences all around the world. We've been forced into a situation where, from my knowledge and having participated in a few over the last few weeks, they run just fine, if not even more smoothly from a virtual perspective. These startups that are growing at all costs and figuring out how to reduce burn and monetize 4 or 5 years from now, it's a bit scary when you think about it. It's a bit scary as to how the VC world was operating prior to COVID. And so I like reading articles. I like seeing intuition where businesses are forced to get back to basics, or they've taken the initiative to go back and say, let's control what we can control. Let's highlight the things that really matter. And when you're under pressure as a leader, it's really hard to fake being a strong leader. It just highlights a few of those integral things, which I think is a real positive.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, that's all the serious questions I have for you so far. But I think that it would be fun to just do a quick fire round at the end. So, in lockdown, what have you been relying on more, coffee or wine?
No contest, wine.
I've had to revert to the plunger coffee scenario, being locked down in New Zealand. So definitely the plunge coffee. I'm back.
Wow, I am the same. Okay, what do you miss most about being in the office?
My team.
I love a whiteboard. So I'm definitely missing the war room discussions.
You had to say team, Jill. If you weren't a startup CEO, what would you be?
Startup CEO.
I think I'd like to be a chopper pilot.
Nice. What is your social network of choice?
Twitter. Love my news source on Twitter. I'm obsessed by the American political situation, so I just love Twitter.
Yeah, similar for me in terms of news source, but for mine's Instagram. I've really shifted to having what I want on there, following what I do like, and from a technology perspective and from a sports perspective, it's my absolute #1 news source, which is great.
Interesting. What book would you recommend to a budding leader?
Scott Farquhar recommended Scaling Up to me, so I'd recommend that on because I think his advice is not too bad. He's not done too shabby. So
there's a few good ones out there at the moment. I think Let My People Go Surfing by Von Chenard, the founder of Patagonia.
Okay, good tips. What one word would best describe your leadership style?
Direct.
Optimistic.
Good. What one thing do you want to achieve this year?
I'm sure you're looking for something really inspirational here, but I think I will go with push-up jacks for F45. I'm always a bit disappointed I can't do them every day.
Okay.
Mine's kind of the same actually, which is a bit disappointing, but I feel like this one's been on repeat for the last couple of years, but I want to say adios to the dad bod. Get a bit fitter.
Both fitness related. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And finally, what is the first thing you're going to do once lockdown is over?
Team drinks. Zoom drinks are fine, but nothing really beats us all having a bit of a laugh, having some drinks in the office on a Friday afternoon. That might be quite nice.
I'll hold you to that, Jill.
The Scottish stereotypes are definitely true coming through this whole webinar.
That's what we've learned. How about you, Nick?
I think playing golf with friends. It gets a bit lonely going out there playing solo. So I'll definitely look to shift that as soon as we're allowed to.
Awesome. Okay, well, we're over time, but we've had a question here that I think we'll just answer one, because I think this is a really great question. It says, what is the best piece of advice that you've been given in relation to the COVID crisis?
There is so much out there. That's what I will say straight away. And so many webinars, so many papers, so many blogs. It can be overwhelming. And thanks for everyone listening to our webinar today, because I know you've got a choice of many. But I think what made the most impact to me was Sequoia's Black Swan note to founders and CEO. And it came out really early. I think it was like, on the first couple of days of March. And I think about 20 odd people sent it to me. So it definitely helped shape my response to COVID at Vamp. It was about taking early decisive action. And I think if you do that, it really demonstrates to your team that you're in control when everything else seems uncontrollable. So the one thing that you can control is making those decisions. So even though some of the decisions can be hard and people are impacted, once you've made them and executed on them, you can then move on to the next set of decisions. And I think if you're going to keep achieving your goals, which is very wartime CEO, that's what you have to do. So I think that really helped me coming in so early in March. And I think I'm really glad that I made some decisions in early March. But can I have two things?
Okay.
I said I love Twitter earlier, and I think I read a great quote from Paul Graham. And he said, the time to act is when it feels too early. And that's something I want to get better at. I have acted, I've rarely ever regretted taking early action, but I've definitely regretted not taking action. So that's a goal for me. But there aren't many regrets that I've made during the COVID crisis, which has been good.
That's amazing. How about you, Nick?
Yeah, I read the article about Patagonia, the company shifting their logistics practices and chain to adapt to the new norm. And so when I think about them as a company, the advice, I guess, is quite simple. And what's interesting about this for me is that whether we're in the current situation or we're back in a more positive situation, these principles should remain. It's not necessarily something you only do when you're under pressure or the general market's in a bit of a negative. I know they speak to every long-lasting business. The methods of conducting the business will constantly change, and you need to pivot and be able to pivot as needed. But the values, the culture, the philosophies remain constant. And so it is really about understanding, control what you can control. There's no point worrying too much about the stuff that's out of your control. Get back to the basics. Focus on that customer, help them find value in your product or your service, and the rest will take care of itself. Again, it can be used now or 5 years ago and 5 years to come. Businesses have been successful over the journey with many, many different scenarios put in front of them. And those that remain to these types of things generally come through the other side. So I continue to draw inspiration from how they operate and the decisions they make.
I think that's right. I think this theme of back to basics that we've had throughout this whole conversation is really telling and relevant for me.
Absolutely. Amazing. Well, I think that's a good bit of advice to leave this on. Thank you both so much for joining me. I know your busy schedules, and I think I'm right in saying you've both been homeschooling as well.
That's the other thing I wanted to touch on. All teachers deserve a pay rise. I have no issue with paying some more tax to make sure we sort the teachers out. I had the best intention 6 weeks ago, moving into lockdown with amazing structured days for my 4 and 6 year old, and that's reverted to 3 or 4 hours of Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation. So thank you, teachers, and we'll see you all on Monday, teachers.
I agree. Wartime CEO, wartime mom. Imagine that, Annabelle. Poor wee thing.
Oh, thanks so much for sharing your wisdom, both of you, and I hope it was helpful for everyone watching. If you missed any of the other webinars in our COVID-19 perspectives, you can catch up on our blog. We've covered social media marketing, influencers, and people and culture, so definitely go and check those out. But thanks so much for watching. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.